Welcome back to Clean Sheet. Today we are going to talk about the transfer window. This has been a very happening transfer window, and I'm sure you all didn't have the time to catch all of the transfers, but we've got Videep here to talk about them. So yeah, without wasting any time, let's just get into it.
So I'll give it to you straight, Ayush. Deadline day September 1, and we've got over a month for that deadline to come. But well, since the Premier League begins in around 2 weeks' time, I think, most of the clubs have signed a majority of the players that they were looking out for. So I think let's just touch up on the few highly influential players for the big six teams at least. So let's
Fair enough.
start off with Arsenal. They started the window with the attacking midfielder not Carvalho, sorry, Fabio Vieira. Uh, he plays at attacking midfield, like I said, and what I noticed about him is he plays all along the midfield. He plays at central midfield. He sometimes drops down deeper. He plays towards the sides as well. And what I noticed was he provides a lot of assists. There's a lot of goal scoring potential in him individually, and that is what we saw last season from him. So that's a very influential signing from Mikel Arteta's point of view. While we're talking about Mikel Arteta, let's also look at Gabriel Jesus. He's come straight from Man City. He's a proven Premier League striker, and he's a perfect Lacazette replacement. Right from that straight mold. Plus, we're kind of seeing this Brazilian team come up at Arsenal. We've got Gabriel, the centre back. We've got Gabriel Martinelli, the attacking player. So, what do you think of Gabriel Jesus fitting
I
into
think
that team?
actually from the start I've been saying this. Jesus was actually the perfect signing for Arsenal since the start because Jesus is a player who can play on the wing and on the strike. So he's sort of a versatile player, and that's exactly what Arsenal needed.
So that's Arsenal covered up. Their two major signings of the season. Then we move on to your club, Chelsea. So the two most influential signings that we probably know of is Raheem Sterling and Koulibaly, right? So let's talk about Sterling first. He's a little flexible on the right or the left. He's fast. He's Premier League proven. He has European experience in his bag. But this is a question I directly want to ask you. Don't Chelsea already have too many attackers to fit in Raheem Sterling, who might not even fit in Thomas Tuchel's system?
See, why Tuchel went for Sterling was because Sterling is the guy who'll get you goals. If you see Chelsea's game, that's the only problem Chelsea has. Chelsea makes amazing plays, Chelsea attacks, but in the end, there's no end result. And Sterling somehow just gets the results. Like even in goals, since 2016, only five players have scored more goals than Sterling in the Premier League. That's amazing because Sterling doesn't have that kind of game. He's just a really good converter. I think that's why Sterling was signed. And talking about the thing whether we needed him, I think that if because of Sterling we cannot sign another center back, then this is a problem because that was a more urgent position which needed to be filled. This was something which should have come afterwards. But if a center back and Sterling come in, it's perfect. It's literally perfect.
While you talk about centre backs, like I mentioned, Koulibaly is also a player you've already signed. I think that's exactly the player Chelsea needed. He's a big game player. He's proven his European expertise with Napoli before. He's a strong centre back, exactly what Chelsea needed as well, with so many of the defenders leaving. And if you look at it, he's a long-term Thiago Silva replacement as well. But again, the question arises: Napoli plays a two-man centre-back formation, as far as I know. Will he fit in into that Thomas Tuchel three centre-back formation?
I think he'll fit right in. I think he'll do even better in a three-man formation, to be honest. And Koulibaly is the player who can actually compete with Van Dijk in Premier League because he's amazing. He's literally amazing. He's led Senegal to that victory. He's the captain in Napoli, so he's clearly a leader. He can, as you said, he can easily replace Thiago Silva. And even with Azpilicueta aging, I think we have a player who can play in the center as well as RCB. He's actually perfect. He was my favorite signing throughout the season. Like he was the one player
And
I would have
while
signed.
we're talking about Chelsea, what is another centre-back you would go for? Because as far as I know, you play a very centre-back reliant formation. So I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure you're going to need
we
another
are a three
centre-back.
defender
Might it
formation.
be Jules Koundé or another?
We are a three defender
Yeah.
formation, correct? So now Rudiger and Christensen have left. So we've already filled the center and the RCB positions. The position which needs to be filled is the LCB one. So Rudiger was formerly playing in that position, and that man's role is to carry the ball. He should be a good dribbler who can carry and who can defend. So for that, the best player which comes to my mind, to be honest, is a guy called Yandika in Frankfurt. I think he's literally perfect for it. But Kunde rumors are more Kunde rumors are just more popular right now. Like people are saying Kunde might come to Chelsea. I'd love to have Kunde, but I would have loved him more a year or two back, as I said in the previous videos last year when we were football match daily. So Endika would be my preference, but I'd be happy with Kunde too. I just want a good, reliable left centre back.
To be honest, Endika would be the perfect signing. He's got European expertise in the Europa League last season. He's actually a very good signing. If Chelsea do somehow sign him, he'd be very underrated in the beginning, but then he'd show his quality and show his professionalism. I
And he's
would
long
agree.
term.
And he's very long term as well. Yeah, he's quite young as well. That's true. Well, now that covers up Chelsea. Let's move on to my club, Liverpool. And like I think there's only one signing we need to talk about at Liverpool, Darwin Nunez, striker, proper number 9 signed from Benfica. So the one thing I would want to talk about him would be that this is probably when Klopp goes to change from the false nine to a regular number 9 formation. Because as we've seen, Darwin Nunez is the perfect poacher. He's the one person you look to get the goals from the central position. We had Sadio Mane, we got Mo Salah who used to get those goals from the wing. But now Darwin Nunez, he gets the goals from the middle. And that's, I think, what Klopp is looking for, a proper number 9. Not Diogo Jota, who plays a little like Roberto Firmino, maybe like a false 9, but like a proper number 9. Plus, he's also left wing option now that Sadio Mane's position has been void, and to be a more backup to Luis Diaz if it's required. So that's Darwin Nunez for me. I think it's a very long-term signing, and I think he'll be very heavily judged on I think, a little underwhelming for season, but I think it's a more long-term investment.
Before you move on to the next player, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Klopp will not change his system, and Darwin Nunes will serve as a false nine. And you'll actually see the goals from the coming center, but they'll be long range goals because as far as I've seen Nunes, he's very well built. He's big. He looks like Haaland, but I don't think his game is like that one to go in the D and just. It's not a traditional striker game in my opinion. I think we'll see a lot of long range goals, sort of in the ways of Lewandowski, to be honest. I think Darwin Nunes is an amazing signing. Everyone is running behind him, but yeah, not a lot of people are going to say this, and this is kind of controversial. But I think Klopp won't change his system. It will be false nine, and Nunes will be amazing.
Wow, okay. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest, because like Klopp is insistent that he sticks Darwin Nunez up that number 9. But let's see, it's Klopp. He would definitely want to stick to his favorite formation. So like that's a very controversial call, but I would probably not be very surprised either. So moving on to Man City, you talked about Erling Haaland. Let's talk about Erling Haaland. City also playing without a striker for the past 2 seasons. They were also heavily reliant on that false 9 role. Kevin De Bruyne filled that void. Bernardo Silva filled that void. Phil Foden filled that void. He tried Jack Grealish in that role for a while, for a game or two. But does Erling Haaland play at a false 9 position, or does Pep move to a number 9 formation?
Here I again pick the controversial thing, and I'll say Pep changes his system for Haaland because I think Pep just really, really, really wants to win the Champions League, and Haaland is like the best striker right now, right? That's the striker who you buy. He's a poacher. He's overperformed his XT by long, long margin. He was an amazing signing. Now Manchester City did not need him. They had Silva, Foden. They were doing a decent job. But it's City. They have money. They need the league. What can I say?
So Pep Guardiola changes formation to incorporate Erling Haaland at that
Yes.
number 9. I'd like to see that too as well. As a neutral, I'd love to see that, to be honest. With Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva all providing him with that final ball, and him just anywhere in that box, he's finishing those goals
I'm
out of
scared.
nowhere.
I'm
I'd
scared.
love to see that.
I'm so
I'm
scared.
scared too. I'm terrified.
Let's hope
Then
he's
we
another Werner.
Okay, of course, it's your own team player, but like, okay, I guess. Then we move on to that Manchester neighbors United. I think. Lissandro Martinez is the best signing they could have had in this transfer window. I wouldn't say Christian Eriksen. I wouldn't say Tyrell Malacia. I'd say Lissandro Martinez. A left-footed centre back is the person they needed in that Man United team with Eric Ten Hag already deputizing a lot of his ex-Ajax players. This is another one, and we all know who the last left-footed centre back from Argentina at Man United was Marcus Rojo, and he was outstanding. And Lisandro Martinez, the next one. So he comes number one for me at Man United. And then I know what you said last week, by that last video about how Tyrell Malacia is more important than Alessandro Martinez. He comes number two for me. He's a very good person for squad depth at left back, and he would obviously fit in really well at Eric Ten Hag's system. There's no doubt about that. But Lisandro Martinez number one for me, without a doubt. Christian Eriksen comes at number three because I think they have a very similar player with Bruno Fernandes in that profile already.
I'd put
Then,
I'd put Malaysia first and Ericsson third, just like you.
yeah, that's what I said. So, moving on to Spurs, the last of the big six. Spurs have made 8 signings so far, if you would believe it or not. 8 signings so far.
And this is
Here I'm
Spurs.
going to talk about two. This is Spurs, yeah. I'm talking about two. Antonio Conte is changing the system, isn't he? Firstly, I'd like to talk about Yves Bissouma from Brighton, a really dependable central midfield player. In the January transfer window, he was linked to a lot of clubs, United and Liverpool included. But now he's made the move to Spurs. He's a proven Premier League midfielder. He's very young. He's got a lot of potential, and I think he would fit so great in that Conte system where you need that kind of stamina to keep going for those 90 minutes, and he's going to be really great sitting right behind Harry Kane, right behind Son, right behind Kulusevski. He's going to be a great signing. What do you think about that?
I'm again going to be the controversial one, and I'm going to say Bissouma is going to be a failed signing for Spurs and Conte. He won't work for Spurs. I think Spurs already had hard-working midfielders with a lot of stamina who were putting in a lot of efforts. What I felt they needed in midfield was creativity, and Bissouma is not creativity. Bissouma is a very technically very powerful player, but he's not creative at all. So I'm going to go
I
out and say
agree.
that Bissouma is the worst transfer you have mentioned till now from the start of the video.
Okay, I guess. But I think at number two, I think another signing that would raise a lot of eyebrows. I'm not putting Ivan Perisic at that number two point. I think he's a really good signing, but I think Richarlison is going to be better. Not because he's a better signing, but because that's something we need to address. Richarlison from the beginning hasn't really been the best display for the beautiful game, and it's not just because he's from Everton. It's just because I have never been able to respect him as a player. I don't think he's I don't think he's a Conte player as such, but a lot of Spurs fans seem really happy with that signing. He is, of course, he's very flexible around that attacking role. He can play strike, he can play left wing, he can play right wing. He's a decent Premier League striker, I'd say, but he's got no European expertise. And with if Spurs are really aiming for that European glory again, is Richarlison the best signing? And number two, what kind of playing time is he expecting when he's no way going to be starting over Kane, Son, or Kulusevski?
All right, you and I are just definitely not on the same page today. I don't know what happened. I would put Richarlison above Bissouma. I think Richarlison could work well for Spurs, and he'd shift to a more central midfielder role than a striker one. So he wouldn't replace Kane or Son or someone, but rather one of the midfielders. And he's the one who Conte will depend on for the creativity I was talking about. I am saying that Richarlison is better than Bissouma for Spurs.
See, I think to some extent I'd agree with you about the creativity, but I've watched Richarlison at Everton. There was nothing impressive about him. I genuinely hated him. I genuinely hated everything about him. He calls himself a pigeon for some reason. I have nothing but hate towards him. He's challenging Roberto Firmino's Brazil spot for some reason. It's absolutely senseless. I have no idea what Spurs saw in him
See,
while
I
signing
don't like
him.
Richarlison either. I'm just saying that Spurs need that kind of thing right now. I don't. That's just
See,
my.
I don't see him shifting back to the midfield to do that just because I don't see him as quality at all. But your opinion, I think you have the entitlement for that. But that's it from my side. That's it. I would not want to end. I would not want to say more about Richarlison because I've got a lot more to say about him.
Yeah, that was
None of it
really
is positive.
that really struck a nerve for you. Okay, so is that all?
That's all.
Wow, that was faster than I thought. So we really just wrapped up all of those transfers in such a short time. I mean, why aren't you subscribing for at this point? I have no idea which channel is giving you the Sky Sports. Oof. All right. So if you enjoyed this video, tell us in the comments whose opinions you agree more to. Will Klopp switch to the false nine, stay with the false nine, or will Guardiola switch to the stay with the false nine? I'm just blabbering at this point. You know what I mean. Just tell me what you think about all of the transfers and consider subscribing seriously though.